We are back for part 5 of this character customizer figure it out as I go devlog series. So in this part I really want to get some clothes onto this character. So I'm in Daz, I have our ROM scene loaded up, and actually the first thing I'm going to do is save as, because I don't want to override our base character scene, I don't think at the moment. So I'm going to call this one outfits 1 maybe. And I'm just going to find a couple of bits of clothing that I want to put on. I have a ton of clothing options for Genesis 9. Let's start with these two. So we have a top, some pants. Be helpful to have a different color on this character, just to try and see any poke through. A couple of things we want to be careful of. The way that trying corrective morphs work, it puts the character into various poses, and sometimes with clothing, if the clothing has smoothing applied to it and the body is intersecting with the clothing, you'll get distortions where that intersection happens. So I tend to either disable, well, there's a couple of ways you can deal with it. One is to just disable smoothing. These pants don't come with smoothing by default, so it's not a problem. You can also just ignore it and then in Unreal Engine delete the pose, delete the specific pose from the pose driver in Unreal Engine. For, by specific pose I mean this pose with the leg up like that, for example. You can just delete that. Because particularly if your character is unlikely to ever have its legs in that pose, it's not going to make much of a difference. But if you didn't delete it and we were getting that distortion, then the pants would distort when the legs are up like this, even if the arms in Unreal Engine weren't in the way, because it's going to generate the morph based on the clothing. In Daz, a little difficult to explain, but hopefully that makes sense. We might try some other pants and be able to show it a bit better. For anyone that's been following along with the development of DTH, you'll know I'm really big on optimization, so I'm going to try and do this so that any part of the body that is obscured by a piece of clothing won't be there, it will be deleted. That's the more optimized way of doing it, but also probably the harder way of doing it. We could also just mask via materials the parts of the body that are occluded by clothing. DTH lets you do both. That is easier to do, quicker to process, but you're not really getting any performance gains because that geometry will still exist underneath the clothes, it just won't be visible. So little bits like this poking through I'm not too worried about, because like I say, the body under these pants will be for the most part deleted, so you won't see it. So I'm basically just looking for the pants are sort of deforming reasonably well. Same with the top. There are a couple of arm poses that can cause problems, mainly this one. If there was smoothing applied to this top, we would get some distortions where the arm interpenetrates with it. But both of these are, clothing assets don't have smoothing by default, so don't need to worry about it in this case. The final thing I want to check is just subdivision levels. These don't have subdivision by default, these two. They were modelled reasonably high poly. It looks like they were modelled at sub D1 anyway. So I'm not going to add subdivision to them. I think there's enough polygons. What I typically try to do is get the polygon count of the clothing to be roughly the same as the body. So if we look at one of these squares and then look at one of these squares, they aren't too far off. So I'm pretty happy with the sub D level for the clothing just being at its base resolution. So that's one outfit. Well, that's really, we're not thinking in terms of outfits, it's two clothing assets we can use. For some reason I can't say assets today, weird. I'm going to cheat though, I'm going to add some more clothing. I'm going to export them all out of Daz at the same time, but then I'll process them somewhat separately in Houdini. It'll just save me another round trip out of Daz. So I'll find another outfit, something a bit different for a top. Also for now I'm just sticking to tight-fitting clothing. I'm not thinking at this stage about cloth simulations in Unreal Engine. I think there's going to be some challenges around that just due to limitations with cloth simulations not supporting morphs at the moment in Unreal Engine. So I can't have a dress, for example, both conforming to our heavy morphs or any of our full body morphs, but also dynamically simulating. There are some deformer graph functions in recent versions of Unreal Engine that allude to the fact that that might be coming, but they don't seem to work at the moment, and we could all be misunderstanding that. It could have something to do with the machine learning cloth deformations rather than chaos cloth simulations. I don't know, there's no documentation about it, and no one from Epic's really spoken up about it. Anyway, I'm going to hide our first batch of clothing. So we have this top. It's going to have a quick look at its polygons. It also seems pretty right how it is. It's on sub D1 by default. So I'm going to leave it on sub D1. Going to check. Does it have smoothing? It does have smoothing. It doesn't seem to be causing any problems. If you look very closely where the arm's interpenetrating there with smoothing on versus off, it is making a difference, but and sometimes it's a lot more noticeable. It's hard to see what's going on internally. What I typically do is turn smoothing off, and if it doesn't make a noticeable impact on the rest of the poses, so this one in particular when the shoulders are raised fully, the collarbone is raised fully, you want to make sure that is conforming with the body. Sometimes it doesn't without smoothing on. Pretty happy with that one from what I can tell. And let's add one more sort of set of pants, or perhaps we'll just do bit smaller. Maybe that one. Sub D1. I actually don't know what interactive update is supposed to do, but I typically have it on. I don't know why. I think I recall reading somewhere that it's better if that's on. Sub D1, I'm pretty happy with sub D1 I think for this one. This one, yeah. Some of these poses which, I mean, realistically, the character's unlikely to get into unless it's rag trolling, but they do benefit from... Actually, this one's not really conforming very well with the character. It's got 0 collision iterations, which is... Also, don't forget to use any adjustments that the clothing themselves has if you need to, so I just give it a bit more space at the back there. This clothing, I said, it's going to be harder to cull the body underneath very precisely. We can only cull by more quads, really. So we won't have a nice line following the exact curve, it'll be to the nearest quad. Oh shit. Sorry, the other thing I forgot myself, it's a bit annoying actually, is because we're adjusting sliders, it's just going to drop a keyframe on whatever frame we're on, which is a bit annoying. I'm going to undo all that. Go to frame 0 and do it again. See there, smoothing is causing a interpenetration issue. Yeah, it's a bit of a trade-off. Really wish in Daz there was a way to disable self-intersections or self-collisions. I think on the whole I'll leave it off. These pants also seem to have some very bad skin weights on some of the areas. I might actually see if we can find a better set. Make sure I have my character selected. To be honest, almost none of the clothing assets handle some of these poses very well. These poses are extreme, like I say, it's pretty rare your character will be in these sorts of poses. This pose in particular is a problem with the arms are bent right down. It might end up removing that from the room altogether. It does make a difference to the shoulders, but it does cause problems. Alright, I'm going to call it for that one. I think, like I say, we will cull the body as much as we can underneath. We'll see what that looks like. So that's basically my, I guess, second set of clothes. So many things to, I guess, think about and figure out when you're putting modular clothing together. What do I do? For example, layers like this. I guess we want this military top just in case to sit above it. Alright, I think that'll do for this demonstration, or this experiment. Don't really, like I said before, I don't have any experience doing this really. So if we had this combination, we will get more problems. Sadly, this top doesn't seem to have just an expand waist. It's got an expand all. That's probably pushing it out at the top a bit too far. You're kind of at the mercy of whoever made the clothing. It says, oh look, overpants, there we go. Let's bring that back then. I guess it could also go inside the pants. Maybe that, and then that brief should be fine as well. And then our other possible combination, the top's not gonna matter. All right, something like that. This is just a rough test, I suppose. So now we pretty much do what we did just for the body. So when we process this through DTH, all of the bits of clothing will get all of the same morphs that the body has. We can do some optimizations because they don't need, for example, any of the facial morphs, so we can tell DTH to not bother calculating facial morphs for the clothing. So now I'm just going to export this. You know how to do it by now. FBX animation, make sure we get our sub-Ds right actually, which I've already forgotten. I just want to make sure they're all visible. Keep fits were on base, I'm pretty sure. Base sub, yeah. Military top, sub D1. And the briefs should also be on base, I think. Sorry, also on sub D1. Alright. It'd be great if there was an option to just a button to click to just match what was in the viewport. One base, one. Alright, so I'm gonna cut and rejoin in Houdini, I think, because you know how to do this bit by now. I'll just export the FBX and then I'll do the Alembic. Okay, here we are with our Houdini project open, and I exported all the files out of Daz as both FBX and Alembic in the usual way. I put them in a subfolder off our main working directory, just called outfits1. And I think in Houdini I'm going to work within the same project, so if I come up a level out of DazToHue up to the object level, I'm going to rename this to just base character, I guess. Then I'm going to copy that and paste it. Which will take a minute. There we go. I'll call this outfit 1. I can hide the base character just by turning off its display flag. Excuse me, coughing fit. I had a really annoying tickly cough lately, which is the worst thing you can have when you're trying to do a whole bunch of recording, but my wife's been away for a couple of weeks, so from the perspective of being able to get a lot of recording done with a quiet house, I just had to forge ahead. So we're now working in our outfits 1 folder, which is the exact clone of our base character. So on the import node, I'll just rename it outfit 1, I guess. Need to update the files we're looking at, so that'll be our outfit files. You do have some mismatches, which is odd. Going to just temporarily something's happened. One of the outfits hasn't shit. I suspect I left one of the outfits hidden in Daz, and which means the Alambic exporter hasn't exported it. Rookie error, but I'm going to keep it in the video, I think, because if you happen to do the same, you'll know what's gone wrong. I'm just going to reload our Daz outfit scene and see if that's indeed what happened. Yeah, by default the Alambic exporter won't export hidden figures. It is indeed what I did. I forgot to unhide these before I exported, so I am going to unhide them. I'm going to re-export the files and I'll come back after that. Sorry about that. Alright, we're back, having made sure that all of the clothes were visible before exporting in Daz. We now don't have any shape count mismatches, so everything's looking good. We're in our outfits subnetwork and we're good to go. So I'm only going to work on 1 top and 1 pair of pants at a time, because well, we have to do it that way if we want to do any sort of occlusion culling, really. So I'm going to delete one of the tops from both the FBX and the Alambic. That one. Okay, it was confusing me that that wasn't green, but it looked like a viewport update glitch. So we'll start with, I guess, these. It doesn't really matter which combination we do them in, I don't think. So that's all we need to do on the import node. On the skin node, so the way I'm planning on doing this is that, as I said before, I guess there's a bunch of different ways you could do modular clothing, each with their pros and cons. I'm going to do it in a way which is similar to, I think, the way Skyrim used to do it, where you're not just exporting the clothing asset, you're also exporting the parts of the body that it owns. So if we look at this pair of briefs, in fact, if I isolate that, the briefs, I'm not just going to export the briefs, I'm going to export the briefs and the pelvis, because this pair of briefs is going to be the owner of the pelvis slot when it's assigned in our customizer. Therefore, its job is to contain not only its clothing geometry itself, but also any parts of the pelvis slot that it isn't fully covering, basically. That's how I'm thinking of doing it. Which means that the briefs need to belong to our pelvis shape group. So if I clear that and isolate just our pelvis shape group, I need to assign the briefs to it. Now this will be a single shape that gets exported out as an FBX. And similarly for the top, it will own the torso body slot, which means it needs to belong to the torso shape group. And if I've done that right, we shouldn't have any unassigned shapes, so they all belong now to one of the slots, body slots. So that's all we need to do on the skin node. We don't need to do anything on the skeleton node. We will need to fix up materials. However, for the clothing, for the sake of simplicity, I'm going to just assume that each piece of clothing can get away with a single material. Some of them can, most of them can, some of them can't, some of them might have more complicated material setups, but I think what I'll do for the sake of this is give every piece of clothing the same material. Will I don't know, we'll see. First thing to do is figure out what goes with what. So we have these unassigned materials, so band goes with the top, and presumably base goes with that as well. Yep, so band and base make up the top, which leaves us with briefs, which is just an easy single material. So create a new material called top one, I guess, and that will have the band and the base. I'll create a new material called pants one. I don't know about these naming conventions, we'll see. And that will have, what's it called? Briefs. So now we shouldn't have any unassigned materials. We don't. We've got our pants one and our top one. I don't know if I want to give these more unique names like fitness top, or I don't think it ultimately matters. The end result, we'll leave it at that, I think. UVs, let's just check that they're looking okay for our clothing assets. So we have our top, which looks fine. again, we could get really sophisticated and squeeze multiple bits of clothing onto a single texture, but I won't do that for now. Briefs should be fine. Pants one, yeah. So our UVs are fine. That looks good. Now, the fun bit, occlusion. Let's start with the briefs because that's going to be easier, I think. So I'm going to enable occlusion culling. We'll try an automated method, and if that doesn't work, we'll switch to manual painting. So the occluding will be our briefs. Doesn't really matter which we select. The occluded will be our pelvis. Actually, I can't use that. I can use that. So I'm using groups rather than the attributes to select. Reason being that our pants also belong to the pelvis named attribute, so they can't occlude themselves, so I'm just using the groups because the briefs and the pelvis are separate as far as groups are concerned. Anyway, I can bring some of this back, I guess. As I said earlier, it occludes to the nearest point, so I can't get a perfect occlusion along just the seam of the briefs. We can only get as close as the nearest point, really. If I turn transparency off, to make sure we're not getting any visibility of the deleted polygons, and we might in other poses, so it's always good to scrub through the timeline and just check some other poses. So I'll need to bring some back to cover that. You could also mess with the dilation and juggle both, I suppose. Automated occlusions only gonna get you so far. Remember, we're viewing this without any corrective morphs applied, so it will look worse than it would be with the corrective morphs applied. What I really should do is paint in some manual occlusion, but given this is just a demo, I might just leave it at that for now. However, for the top, I don't think auto occlusion is going to work particularly well, but we'll give it a go. So add a new occluding group. Occluding will be our tank top. Occluded will be our body, I think. Oops, briefs. Body. Also our nipples and Again, we'll bring some of that back. So you're never going to be able to get a really good occlusion, I guess, along the straps there. So it's going to be a bit challenging. I'm just going to do this roughly somewhere down the track. I do have a video on where I do go through the manual occlusion painting method, but I think that'll do for now. Seeing a little bit there. Alright, let's do it. We'll do a quick manual paint. So if I put down a attribute paint, visibility. Hide the top. Show it at the end. I'm actually going to paint to retain attributes, so I just want to keep a little bit more under the arms there. So I'll turn on symmetry. Call it retain. Only, bump that right up. I think that's all I need to do. It's been a while since I've done this. Come in and actually, sorry, before we do that, in the occlusion node, I want to tell it to use the retain attribute. Few more polygons back under the arms. Something like that'll do. So DTH, in terms of occlusion, it has a couple of different methods. So it's set to delete. It can also generate masks, so it won't actually delete the polygons. It will, in this case, bake a mask to the vertices red channel, and then in the material setup we can say just hide anything hide any vertices where the red channel is 1, and that will have the same effect as making them invisible in Unreal Engine. They'll still be there, so you're not getting any real performance gains. The other option is we can bake the occlusion mask to textures, and again on the material we can load the occlusion texture and it will have the same effect. It will hide the vertices that where the texture is applied. Pros and cons to all of them, but for now I think I will just delete them. We'll see how we go. So that will be our outfit with some very rough occlusion culling happening, but it'll do for a demonstration. That's all we need to do for the occlusion. We don't need to do anything on the pose asset node. We want to use exactly the same pose assets to generate all the morphs for our clothing. However, I forgot, back on the skin node, for our pelvis, which has some clothing, I'm going to exclude it from the face. In fact, I'm going to exclude everything from the face other than the head, obviously. and that should just save some processing time, so it won't bother calculating facial morphs or trying to calculate facial morphs for our pelvis, for example, because they're not really applicable. Gonna save now, export. I'm going to export into our prototype folder, and it will automatically create a subfolder, in this case called outfit1, so I'll put all our files into that. Now we don't need to export everything again, we only need the pelvis and the torso. The rest haven't changed from our base character. I don't need these again, so I can untick those, and fingers crossed this works. I haven't done selected shape testing for a while, we'll see. That's it, let's hit export, and if that works I will see you after it. Alright, that's finished exporting. I suppose before we move on to the second set of clothing, we should test it in Unreal Engine, make sure our Unreal Engine project doesn't explode. So, how am I going to organize things? I think I'll create a folder called outfits, I guess. Import into there, so let's we have this now outfits1 subdirectory under our export directory. You can see the two files we exported. Start with our torso, I guess. And make sure we're assigning it to our prototype skeleton. We want morphs, all the same import options as before. Seems to have worked. Morphs seem to have worked. Let's do our briefs, our pelvis. Create a quick cloth material. Alright, as a quick test, I'm just going to manually replace our pelvis with our outfit1 pelvis. Probably want to rename those, but and our torso with outfit 1 torso. Huzzah. Alright. Looks like our animation isn't set to loop. Let's do that before I forget. See some very slight, I guess, clipping going on there. I don't know if it's ever going to be possible to get it 100% perfect. We should actually, Daz should have expanded probably the pants a bit more around the thighs, just to give us a little bit more wiggle room. I think overall it's working pretty good. Alright, well, comfortable to do the next one, I guess, so let's jump back into Houdini. Okay, we're back in Houdini in our outfit 1 subnetwork. Just like we did before, I'm going to come up to the top level, copy and paste outfit 1. Dive into outfit 2, and we need to now delete these 2 clothing assets and show the other 2. So it was tights and top. As a tip, can come up to visualize and look at the exploded view. It'll help identify what's what on our character. So I want to delete the tank top and the briefs from both the FBX and Alembic. So I'll delete the briefs and the tank top. Do the same on the Alembic. Our other 2 clothing assets. The pants, quite transparent. I can force opaque materials just so we can see those better. Onto the skin node. So the top is going to own our torso, just like the other top. So add it there. It includes almost all of the torso except for a sliver of the underarms there. And our pants are going to own the pelvis, I guess. And we are going to need in Unreal Engine to tell it to, basically some way of saying it also occupies the legs. But I just want to, we need to pick a body slot for it to own, and pelvis makes the most sense, I think. So we'll assign it there. Alright. Onto our materials. We just need to identify what belongs to what, so arm trims are obviously the top. Neck seam would be top itself, top sides, presumably side trims. So we can copy all of this, or cut it even, and assign it to our top material. We'll call it top 2, I guess. And then same for the pants. Whenever we're left with band 1, base 1. Bottom trim should be part of the top as well. Just those two, I think. Should do it. Okay. Just disable all of that for now. Start with the top, I guess, including will be the top itself. Included should be the body. Nipples and navel. I just need to bring back some of that underarm. Doesn't matter if we do more than we need because we are retaining, not deleting. Why isn't that retaining? Some odd things going on, I think, with the occlusion node. I might have to debug offline. It shouldn't be affecting the arms at all, actually. The arms come to there. Sure what's going on there, but I don't want to debug it as part of this stream, I don't think, so we'll somehow hack our way around it. Ultimately we don't care about the arms because we're not going to export them, really. I'll have to look into that, like I say. Yeah, a big reason for me doing this devlog at all was to push the limits of DTH beyond what I've done in the past, so I was fully expecting to run into some issues, and we have already before, and I released a hotfix, and might have to do the same. I will look into this. Don't quite understand what's going on, but that should do us. All we care about is the occlusion for the torso. So if I look at my torso, it's just going to export this tiny bit of the body. Alright, see how we go with the pants. Another occlusion group. Occluding will be our tights. Occluded will be our pelvis. Oops. I need to bring some of that back. Little sliver. Even though in this particular combination the top is going to cover that sliver of pelvis. That might not always be the case if you think about our earlier top. So we'll do that. This one's a little. This pants is a little interesting as well in that it does occlude the entirety of the legs as well. But I don't need to add it. It's going to own the pelvis slot. And then, as I say, somewhere in Unreal Engine we'll just tell it that it occupies the entirety of the legs as well, and effectively we'll just not have a skeletal mesh on the leg slot when this set of pants is applied. That's my thinking. But we will have our feet poking through. So in Unreal Engine, pelvis would look like that, legs would be blank, feet would be visible. That's my thinking. Alright, that's all we need to do here. Couple of things before I export. I'll rename it to Outfit 2. On our export node, we also want to export the pelvis and the torso, just like before, because they're the two body slots that are being owned by these two assets. So I'll export that, and I'll come back and see you in Unreal Engine. Alright, we have finished exporting our second set of clothing back in Unreal Engine. Just going to create a couple of materials for it. Let's try importing them. Concerns me that this one is so large, the file size. I suspect something's gone wrong, but I was doing weird things when we were doing the occlusion culling. We'll see. Visually it looks okay. Seems alright. Don't know why the file size of that one is so much larger. Oh well. Alright, I suppose there's one quick test before we wrap up this part. We can try them out. Oops, wrong one. Torso 2. So we can do the combinations. That's the second top with the first pants. Second top with second pants. Ooh, there's a problem. First top with second pants. Unwanted occlusion. I've done something wrong there. I need to figure out if it's a problem with the torso or the pelvis. I think given that second pelvis work. Pelvis 1's alright, so I think I screwed up in pelvis 2. Somehow. Alright, I'm gonna jump back into Houdini and try and figure out what I did wrong there. Okay, the original pelvis here has another loop of polygons that are getting deleted on our occlusion operations for the second set of pants. Like I said, there definitely seems to be some odd things going on with the occlusions that I need to figure out. Now we'll just brute force by painting a retain attribute on that strip. That should fix that. So I'm going to re-export just the pelvis. I'll see you back in Unreal Engine. Alright, back after hopefully fixing up that little glitch. Pelvis 2. Let's re-import that. Alright, that seems to have solved it. So we now have 2 pants and 2 tops to select from. I think I'll call it a part there. In the next part, I'm probably just going to stay in Unreal Engine, fix a few things up, things like our camera presets, our focal problem, probably bring in our shorter, taller morphs, and a few other things. Just generally go from there. So thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next part. Bye.